Ali and Dr. Denise Soifat Angus, soon to be joined by Richard Norrie. Afternoon Power Drive, Wednesdays. Good afternoon, Fareed.
Good afternoon, David. How are you? You're good? All is well?
Not really. I'm about 45% there.
My brother, there are people who are 0%, so you are
Yeah.
you're alive and you're kicking, so that's the most important thing. Everything else is fixable, you know.
Yes.
I'm
I
sure
had
we
to
can
come on
find quite
because
a
of the
few people
program.
who we'll find quite a few people who want to exchange positions with your 45% right now.
Yeah, I know. But that 45% ain't good, eh? Trust me. Anybody know that my heart goes out for them.
I hear you. I hear you. Today we have no other than Dr. Denise Soifat Angus with us.
Yeah.
I have a passion for Tobago.
I know.
The last couple of weeks we've had Tobago guests,
Yeah.
and I was trying to find something topical to embrace our Tobago brethren out there.
Yeah, man, it's
Uh,
important.
so often the focus is placed on Mr. Duke and Fali Augustine
Yeah.
and Celestine Davidson. So at least today we have a true Tobago woman
Yeah.
with some serious Tobago roots. I wanted to give her an opportunity to express herself and to let us know what she's about, and perhaps the public will see a different side of her.
Yeah.
So she's on air now. As soon as she joins us, we'll begin.
Okay.
Yeah. Your volume. You just have to take your volume on, Miss Soifat Angus. So David, I'm in your hands with regard to
Oh,
our
I'm
length of time. Soifat is saying that she has
well,
an
I'm seeing
hour and a
that.
half. So,
Good. Great.
hi, Miss Soifat Angus. How are you?
I am good, thank you, Fareed. It's good, so
Okay,
good to
nice.
be here.
It's good to see you. It's good to see you. Sometimes we only hear voices on the radio, and we read the newsprint, but we could never always put a face to the So we're seeing it live in action now. It's almost like we have you right here in our studio, and for the viewers right there in their homes.
Yes, the beauty of what COVID has created for us, the opportunity of being everywhere, regardless of if you're not there.
I must say so. That's one of the benefits of it. Yeah? Before I used to have to go all the way to the studio, beat traffic, find a park, and then rush upstairs. So now you can just tune in from the warmth of your home or your office, whichever you are more comfortable at. But let's get into the discussion. What I did, and let me confess, in the past few weeks, I had the privilege of speaking with Dr. Vanos James. Um, I even took the view of Miss Haddad. So we've had Tobago souls, if we may put it that way, speak, just to hear your side of things in terms of life in Tobago, the politics in Tobago, and basically where we are in the context of Tobago. Richard is joining us. So Richard is here with us. Richard is the main host. I'm just the sideshow. So Richard and I will be engaging you for as long as you would have us. Hopefully it's for minimally an hour and a half. It only sounds long, once you start relating and telling your story, the time passes just like that. So
Okay.
Richard and I will don't worry yourself. Richard, I'll be very easy on you. We're not being adversarial here in any way. We just want to have a nice, light conversation, and you feel free to share your views. If you think we're pushing the envelope a little too far, you can always push it back. We take hints very easily. So,
I got you.
to begin with, thank you again for being with us. Tell us something about yourself. You were you born in Tobago? Tell us about your family life in terms of if your grandfather was Tobagoan and your father, what school you went to, something about you in terms of your roots, because people hear the political side of our public figures, but we never hear the East True Hollywood story, as they would say.
So my grandfather is and my mother's parents lived in Tobago. She grew up in Tobago, and my grandfather actually owned a bookstore, one of the only bookstores in Tobago at that time. and pretty much supplied the whole of Tobago with books, whether you had money or not. Okay. So, and then and so we have very strong family roots in the Rockley Vale, Bagatelle, Scarborough area. And my mother actually studied pharmacy in Trinidad.
Yeah.
Met my father, a pharmacist, and had me and my sister, in addition to the 5 children from my father, who she brought up everyone. And so I actually grew up in Tobago. Initially, I was with my grandparents, and then my parents moved over when I was about 3 or 4. And so I went to Mason Hall Primary School initially, and then I went to Scarborough Primary School. Then I went on to Bishop's High School for my O levels, and then I did Senior Comprehensive High School for my A levels. So I have run the gamut of schools across the island. And I went off to university, to Howard University, where I initially did my pharmacy degree. On completion of my pharmacy degree, I worked for about a year and a half and then went back in to do my medical degree at University of Maryland. And so that is where I got my medical degree and my specialization in family medicine. And then I stayed on there for about a year as an assistant professor before going into private practice in South Carolina. That lasted 2 years. And then I went to Jamaica for 4 years because my husband is Jamaican. And I told him, well, we have to get this out of your system that I actually joined you in Jamaica. So we did that for about 4 years. And then we finally came back home to Tobago. So he's here with me in Tobago. So nobody can say they felt cheated because I gave him his time, but we know where the destination was, right? Back to Tobago. So I've been here for some time, and I was in private practice when I came back because I don't believe in straddling both worlds. And so I always maintained private practice, and inside of that, I became the only opportunity on the island to have on the Tobago Regional Health Authority board because I was not working for the public service. And so I was deputy chairman of the board and then became chairman of the board. And from that, I moved into I was still in my private practice when, I saw so many patients who, they felt as if the system failed them.
Yeah.
And I knew that the system could do so much more than what it was doing. And so the straw really dropped when I had a patient who actually ran away from the hospital in a hospital gown, begging me please to transfer him to Trinidad for a surgery because he had been diagnosed and was just, sitting there in the hospital. And that's how I decided, okay, well, let me see what politics is about, because if it is only policymakers who make decisions in terms of how the whole health sector goes, then maybe I need to be a policymaker because I know that we could do much better than we are doing. And so that's how I got involved in politics.
Now, if we were to examine your involvement in the politics, you didn't start off where you ended up. If we put it differently, if I'm correct, you're independent now. You're not aligned to any of the traditional parties.
Well, I am not aligned to the traditional parties. My first exit was as an independent in the seat, and then I moved on to actually be a part of the newest party on the island, where I'm the political leader of that party. It's the Innovative Democratic Alliance, the IDA. So, further distance.
Tell us something about your views on the progress of Tobago moving forward. Because if we examine where Tobago is in our politics, we have the Tobago House of Assembly, and the House of Assembly, for want of better expression, governs the affairs of Tobago. But uh, given where we are, I don't want to say it's an impasse anymore, because it appears that there's a clear divorce between Watson Duke, the leader of the PDP, and Fali Augustine, the chief sec. Now, that divorce, people have interpreted that relationship in so many different ways, in terms of Dennis. Ansel Dennis was stating that, he considers the 15 executive members that resigned from the PDP, that he views them as Nowarians. I know that could be political talk, but basically they don't belong to a political party, and the people of Tobago would have voted for the PDP, the Progressive Democratic Patriots. Now, my position is this, and my question to you: that divorce between Watson Duke and Fali Augustine, do you see that as healthy for the consensus building in Tobago? Do you see that as another step in the democracy that is Tobago, or you see that as a serious fall-off and a hindrance to progress in Tobago?
So I perhaps would like to take it from the legislative framework first, because as the former presiding officer, I've had the opportunity to really, be very intimate with the Tobago House of Assembly Act. And according to the Act, there are no illegalities with what has taken place. In fact, the Act caters for such a scenario where the Act only speaks to having representatives in the House who then vote for a chief secretary and a deputy chief secretary and a presiding officer. Okay? So inside of that, there is nothing, and the Act is not silent, because the Act speaks to representatives voting for these three positions, and all of them are representatives in the House. And perhaps it really is an opportunity for Tobagonians to see the Act in terms of its fullest capacity. We have gone to the, seeking greater autonomy with discussions with a few people and persons not being interested. But at this time, we are forced to be interested, because when you had the 6-6 impasse, persons started to review the Act, and it, looked at how things were playing out. Trinidad stepped in, created, the 15 seats, and they went back to elections. And so now we have this situation. There's nothing to be done about it. There's nothing to be done, because the only way we can have elections, and I'm not saying by any means that this is a morally right decision. There are moral and ethical issues with it, because you presented yourself in one way to the people, and then you exited by another way. And so I know that people feel very betrayed. However, it is an opportunity for us to really take a look at the legislative framework of the Act and understand, is this what we want? And is this the best for Tobago, even though it does not appear to be good now? Or is it that we want to have something like Trinidad, where it is totally party politics based, and we see the potential of that, where it can go? Right? The Constitution in Trinidad speaks to, if you belong to a party and you leave, then you have to vacate your seat, all of that. That does not happen in our Tobago House of Assembly Act. And so we have an opportunity to really see this play out. The challenge within this opportunity is the Chief Secretary's capacity to lead a team where he is perceived not to be in control of the team. To some extent, they can hold him to account, and I hope they know they can hold him to account, because he can be removed and the Deputy Chief Secretary can be removed by votes of no confidence. And so that is the way that they can remove the Chief Secretary, only by a vote of no confidence. So he will have to determine his leadership capacity to hold these folks together and to ensure that perhaps none of them cross the floor to now form another administration on the other side. That would also be quite an interesting phenomenon. If they can't get along with him in there, whether, that is another option that they will take. But other than that, everybody talks about going back to the election. The Tobago House of Assembly Act is clear in terms of how elections are called. The Chief Secretary cannot get up one day and say, we will have elections next month. There has to be a 3-month period, and with that, a vote has to be taken in the House where the House agrees that the House will stand dissolved and that elections will be held. So, and that has to happen 3 months even before, the election period. And therefore, that protects the House, so to speak, from actually falling at this time. The other way that the House can be dissolved prematurely is that, number one, they vote on no confidence in the Chief Secretary, and then they take a vote that the House dissolves, or the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago rushes through the current autonomy bill, rushes it through so that they can force an election through doing that. Because once you have that approved, it triggers a new election. So without that, we are in for the long haul.
My concern is this: if it is the representatives that subsist within the existing THA, find themselves comfortable, and I mean comfortable in terms of, how people occupying office tend to behave. I mean, it's no secret that once you're in office and you're benefiting from being in office, there's no reason to rock the boat to bring the house down on you. You enjoy the perks of office. You spend your time there, your years. You draw salary. You enjoy whatever other benefits you can siphon. And then when the ship comes to the end of its journey, you disembark and you go on with your life. By then, you may very well be comfortable with what you have done, whether you served effectively or whether you served yourself. I am not of the view, and this is where you can give some input. I'm not of the view that we may get that sort of traction from the current representatives. If it is they're happy with Fali, if it is they're in a safe house with Fali in terms of under his leadership, they feel comfortable, they don't feel threatened, then a vote of no confidence in him may not present itself. My question is this: we can hardly expect that the Tobago House of Assembly is going to be affected by, in its current state, affected by any input from the central government in Trinidad. Meaning that I do not think central government will rush that autonomy bill, because in as much as they may do that and trigger an election in Tobago, they're creating another avenue for Tobago to perhaps, I don't want to use the word secede, that's a very strong word with plenty implications, but for Tobago to express itself differently, meaning independent of Trinidad. And there seems to be there's a need for Tobago and Trinidad more than we may express. And I'm speaking in terms of, let's say, a general election. That support that the incumbent government gets from Tobago, that may carry itself a long way in terms of majorities in parliament. So the central government may not want to rush any autonomy legislation and compromise itself by way of a majority that Tobago lends itself to. Now, having said all of that, my question is this: as we exist right now, how does Tobago benefit in terms of its development, its economic development, in terms of its social development, in terms of the health of Tobago generally, with a THA and representatives that are not aligned to a political party? Because the campaign would have been essentially a support for the PDP, unless it is Fali's of the view that the campaign was all about him and the campaign was all about what he represented. I mean, unless he interprets himself as another Fidel Castro or powerful West Indian leader, somebody with that sort of charisma that could attract attention and sustain attention. We are looking at somebody who's sitting in the vanguard of Tobago's progress. But we're not too sure what he's offering as an individual. We know what the PDP offered in terms of what they profess to offer Tobago. Fali hasn't said I'm adopting everything that the PDP stood for and I'm moving forward on that. Nor has he come forward and say, well, this is my portfolio now. Where do you see Tobago subsisting under this THA as it exists right now?
So, the argument that they were under PDP mandate and that he has no mandate now, we may really want to examine that carefully, because they were under the mandate for the first year and they didn't get through any, significant part of their mandate in the first year, what they set out for them. So I don't know, being within the party versus not being the party really helps them. At the end of the day, it is a capacity issue to be able to operate at the level of governance in the Tobago House of Assembly, such that you can deliver to the people and meet the needs of the people and be able to adjust, even if you had a mandate, to adjust the mandate to the current environmental needs of the people. Because, a government may send a mandate to come in, but when you come in and you see the critical needs of the people, nobody expected to come in and have all of these floods, all of the rainfalls, everything that we are having right now, the devastation in certain areas. And therefore, you have to be able to adjust your mandate, tweak it to ensure that the basic needs of the people are served. But it doesn't help that you have come in, and when you said you would not terminate people, so many people lost their jobs. You have your URP, the Unemployment Relief Program, your CPEP program, people lost their jobs. And I think what is even more concerning and painful is that young people who were in contract positions, not political appointees, they were in contract positions. After repeated years in contract positions, in the middle of a contract, they were sent home. And, I said very early in interviews, all of these decisions are going to come to bear on the economy. And that is what is happening right now. The economy is really very unstable in Tobago. The business sector will tell you, many of them are questioning whether they could keep their doors open. And with the recent carnival activities, where people felt that the 17 million that was spent on carnival, barely, 3 million might have stayed in Tobago. The rest of it would have gone elsewhere. And so all of that, people need to understand, why do we have festivals on the island? We have festivals such that we can have the economy become buoyant in some way. And so that has been one of the greatest challenges we have had. And of course, recently being downgraded by Moody and having, bounce checks within the public domain. That does not augur well for the financial sector looking on, and also investors looking in at investing in Tobago, and even the financial sector giving mortgages to persons out there who require mortgages. Now they're looking at when persons had a 3-year contract from the THA, they could go into the bank and pretty much get a loan. Right now, the bank has even become speculative about those 3-year contracts because they don't know when those persons may be terminated.
All right.
So we are in a challenging situation right now in Tobago, and all heads have to come together to be able to see how best we can turn around the economy.
If we examine the current state of affairs, we've just celebrated, I'm using the word celebrated very loosely, a year of the current executive in power, if we may put it that way, occupying the seat of office at the THA. You've said very clearly that it's not a question now of whether the 15 executive members have adopted the mandate of the PDP. It's a question of they had the mandate of the PDP up until resignation on the 1st of December, and there were certain things and certain needs that weren't addressed. What we saw effectively is Watson Duke, the leader of the PDP, more or less stepping forward, and what he revealed is that he doesn't have the power to carry the mandate of the PDP if he's not the chief sec. He was very critical of Fally Augustine, indicating that there were needs that needed to be addressed in Tobago. That situation with the Roxborough folk performers in New York was more or less the straw that broke the camel back. Clearly there were things that were simmering beneath the surface, and the Roxborough folk performers stranded in New York, that really brought the heat above ground. Watson Duke is agreeing with you, if I may put it that way, for want of a better expression. Watson Duke is adopting that position. He may have been the protagonist in that position, that we were looking at the basic needs of Tobagoans, and the current executive was not addressing those needs. They were enjoying the seat of office. Now, you've said that 17 million was spent on the carnival, and the bulk of that money may have exited. There's a trend of thought that the 17 million could have been spent in another way, that we didn't need in Tobago the spending of 17 million on a carnival or a festival, when in the first year in office there were basic needs that needed to be met. My question is this: where do you see progressively things going from here? Because the 17 million has already been spent. There has not been an audit as to where that money effectively went. We are speculating that it would have been siphoned back in the Trinidad. And when I say siphon, I mean when you give the jobs and the work to people outside of Tobago, basically the money is being banked elsewhere. So it's safe to say you give a Trinidadian the job, he's going to take the money back to Trinidad. You invest the money back, you give it to a local, meaning a Tobagoan, and he tends to reinvest in his home country. So it's a safe presumption or inference to make that the money left. My thing is, the 17 million is gone. Fally spent the first year, like every new executive, exposing what the previous executive did. He said that when he examined, there were 80 roads completed in Tobago. He took a random sample of 20 roads. And when he examined the random sample, he said 11 of those had completion certificates, and those 11 roads weren't even complete. He said about 4 of them plus carried completion certificates, and the work never began. So it means to say, in a very nice collective scientific manner, he's suggesting corruption, because you can't have a certificate of completion on a road, and the roadworks has never began, and yet still money was paid to contractors. So I don't want to say in fairness to him, I'm not here to defend Mr. Augustine. I'm not here to cast aspersions at the THA. I'm saying that, like everything else, there were gross neglect that was exposed in the first year, in the first 12 months. I am asking you now, if you were sitting as the chief sec, what would be your approach as of today, the 14th of December, moving forward, in terms of addressing those needs that you've just identified?
But he has to determine what his new mandate is. Yeah? What is he willing to work with? What do the people want? And they then need to come back to the house, debate it, and go to work on it. Okay? Some of those initial needs haven't changed, and perhaps they've even worsened. And uh, he has to be having more conversations with the private sector on many of the issues. The challenge in Tobago is that our private sector has been struggling for quite a while, and yet we do need a thriving private sector for Tobago to move forward. When you have, and there are too many instances, because it wasn't just Carnival. You hear about a different instance in the agricultural sector where they've chosen to take agricultural produce from Trinidad officially rather from your Tobago farmers. You hear about the contractors who are getting work, from Trinidad in Tobago and not your Tobago contractors. There are too many of those stories, and those need to be addressed. Because if you're taking, the monies outside all the time, there won't be any buying power left on the island to sustain your private sector. And that is what is happening right now, where the crash is coming, because there's not enough money circulating within Tobago to support the businesses around the island, and some of them have begun to close.
Your relationship with Mr. Augustine, is it sufficiently strong, or is there sufficient consensus between yourself and Mr. Augustine that you could have this dialogue with him? Is that relationship a relationship that exists, that subsists, or he's somebody that you don't have that sort of contact with? To share that.
No, I was not one of the leaders Mr. Augustine called when he became chief secretary to dialogue around the table concerning the Tobago Autonomy Bill. He has been quite dismissive of the role of the Innovative Democratic Alliance having taken part in the elections, and has not been, inviting to have discussions about anything. So I don't have any hopes there for any discussions. So I usually speak in the public about my recommendations and what we need to have in terms of moving forward. And like I said, I could be very unbiased about this because I know of the Tobago House of Assembly Act. And so even though I don't think that they are carrying their weight, I do have respect for the law. And the Tobago House of Assembly Act is clear that they get to maintain, the status quo. The 13 of them get to continue sitting in there.
So, based on what you're saying, it seems to be clear that Farley Augustine is less collaborative, or it appears that he's less collaborative in terms of seeking consensus among persons within the politics of Tobago, meaning despite the fact that you have not ascended into office, that you don't form part of the 15 executive members, it appears from what you're stating that not only is not having dialogue with the chambers of commerce or dialogue with the Tobago private sector, he's not even having dialogue with his political I don't want to say adversaries, because this is not about adversarial politics. This is about progressing Tobago. He's not even bridging contact with people around him who are in the politics in order to find common ground to progress Tobago. It doesn't seem to be that way. Right. You're breaking up a bit there, but I gather that you're agreeing with
Yes.
So
far, that's what we're seeing. So far, that's what we're seeing.
Have you all had town meetings or have any sort of village council meetings, or have the people in the villages speak with their representative, to voice their view, because fundamentally the pressure must come from the voting public, from the villages, from the constituencies, from the districts. When that heat is rising from underneath, then everybody on top tends to feel it. It's easy to commentate from where we are now, but have you been, from your point of view, have you been encouraging your constituents and the persons in your community to voice their views? Is there a relationship, in other words, between, forget Farley at this stage in terms of him, we understand what he's about. The executive members come from a representative of the community. Are the villagers distancing themselves from the executive members, or is it happening in the reverse? The executive members have an equally cold relationship with the people out there.
You have had some distancing from the representatives. And what I have urged to Begonians to do or not do is to have a knee-jerk reaction to what is going on. I have urged to Begonians to let us look and see how this is playing out and discover for ourselves what we truly want to create when we say greater autonomy in Tobago. And the only way we can see that is by how this plays out. Instead of having a knee-jerk reaction where you're demonstrating and you want them gone and all of that, I think we have an opportunity to really look at it, to discuss the way forward for it, and to determine how we move forward as an island with our governance structure. And I dare say that I was very excited when I realized that having visited the States of Jersey Parliament and seeing and taking 20 to 25 students as part of that visit whilst I was the presiding officer of the legislature. We visited the parliament in the States of Jersey, and they have a similar constitution to the Tobago House of Assembly Act. The difference is that they have operated their constitution according to independence. Although our act was fashioned in that way, we have never operated it like that. We have always done the party politics. But in States of Jersey, they have done the independence. In fact, they attempted on a few occasions to bring in the party politics, and it did not work. And so when their persons get into the House, when they're chosen by the people, the representatives then vote for, like a chief secretary and the deputy. That chief secretary then chooses from around the table any one of the independents who has the requisite skills that he requires for the different divisions, so to speak, the different areas or ministries. And then he has to bring it to the House to get the House to approve that these are the members of the executive that he's taking. The House can disapprove. Sometimes they say they actually veto one of them just to show that they still have the powers. And they recommend somebody in that space. He then goes off and she then goes off and operates the administration. And when they come back into the House, everyone around the table takes on their independent hat to fight for their constituency in terms of why aren't they getting this done or that done. So it's quite dynamic to see it in operation, and quite intriguing to know what level of democracy we can have on this island should we decide that the party politics is not quite where it needs to be, and perhaps we can have more say from representatives in the House, without this feeling that because I'm part of the party, I can't ask my colleague over here why you're not fixing, something in my constituency. So it's left to be seen. Right now, the Youth Assembly, when we came back, we created a Youth Assembly that was patterned off of that constitution. So the Youth Assembly in Tobago actually work with independence around the table as young people. So maybe young people are going to be leading the way.
We would hope so. Eh?
All right. Let me jump in a bit. I know I've listened, and I wanted to get a good reading on Dr. Sawyer Fat Angus's positions on some of the matters. First of all, I want to commend her for coming on today. And given that I'm only now contributing after listening for quite some time, let me thank you again for coming on and welcome to our program. Thank you, Farid, for that segment. It was quite well done. And same to you, Dr. Sawyerfat. It's also good to know that you've been looking at different models as it relates to governance models in different parts of the world to see which one could be a suitable fit for the island of Tobago. So that alone demonstrates that you have a genuine interest in getting what possibly or potentially could be the best governing system for Tobago. How would you rate the current model that exists in Tobago, the THA's Act, and what has happened so far with the people in Tobago? Has it been delivering in any way at all?
The Act has not been tested for its full capacity. The Act, and this is where I think do have concerns with the Act, where our counterparts in Trinidad are concerned, that even though the Act has had a dispute resolution committee that proposed that Tobago should get no less than 4.03% and can get up to 6.9%, no administration in Trinidad has ever gotten us close to 5%. Okay?
Yeah.
So that always, tells me that I don't think Trinidad has us in the best interest at heart. Okay? And I say it very specific, that Trinidad. Because regardless of which administration came in, they could have given us 6.9% for us to really get off the ground in terms of our development. Has given us any of that. It has always been way less than even 4.5%. So that is my where we are with that act. Like I said, I really I smile when what has happened in the House has shown us how the act was meant to operate. I am sure that perhaps Mr. Robinson was smiling, God rest his soul. He's smiling now because when he created the act, he created it saying Tobago was too small a place to be so involved in party politics. The families are so inextricably linked that they will be broken apart. And when they created the chamber is actually a horseshoe with no separation, suggesting that people, are meant to collaborate more inside of there.
All right. So one of the amendments that from my takeaway from your contribution that you would like to see is that the financial resources to be given to Tobago should move up from 4 point something percent to a minimum of 6 point something percent. You believe with additional financial resources, naturally Tobago would be able to govern itself better.
So there are many more areas that need to be dealt with, and that's a whole conversation on the greater autonomy bill that we could have, which I would have to bring my documents into this space because there are many more intricacies into that. But what I was pointing to is the hypocrisy of the governments in Trinidad from time to time, where they did not need to go to Parliament coming with it. They go that, well, if we get this bill approved, we could get more money. We could already get more money, but you have chosen not to do it.
All right. Let's go back to the Farley operation and the independence in the House, in the THA, in the THA. Farley, as you know, 13 of them now have declared themselves as independent. Shouldn't they go back to the people? We were talking to Dr. Vanos James some time ago, and he shared the view that they should go back to the people to sort of craft a position in terms of the way forward from this point onwards, given that they have left the PDP. How you react to that?
But they have to connect with the people. I mean, they have betrayed the people in the worst way. And they have a right to go back to the people and hear what the people are saying, and perhaps create, whether it is a new mandate or one that is re-endorsed in terms of what they campaigned on, bring it back to the House, debate, and then begin to move forward. But like I mentioned before, I don't know that really people take on mandates seriously here, because in the first year, what they said they were going to do, pretty much, little or nothing much of it was done.
What could the people of Tobago do now? Surely a large percentage of them, I will not be surprised, could be a bit confused and probably don't know how to react to this development. What could you say to the people of Tobago to bring themselves in line with what is happening so that they could appreciate and understand where we are at this point in time in Tobago?
Well, this is an exercise that we are going to be taking on, because the people, it's an opportunity to go back to the people to educate them about the act. It is an opportunity, because before this, persons were never really interested. But given the way it has been tested, it is a huge opportunity where we go back to the people and we hear their views in terms of, is this something that we think, can work? But what does the flip side look like? And then hear their views on it, hear their views. Right now, people are hurting from what has occurred. People feel ashamed with what has occurred. And we get to have conversations with people such that we get them into a place of really informed thinking and knowing and speaking.
They have voted out the last administration both overwhelmingly and convincingly in order to give themselves a different option, another chance of getting themselves to move forward. Did they move forward at all over the last year?
No, there really has been no moving forward. It's almost as if people are commenting and saying, wow, we thought we got through with this one, but it looks like we just had an exchange. So yeah, that's the sentiment that is being, spoken around.
Is it possible, if the people of Tobago get to understand this, I don't know if I could refer to it through their eyes as a debacle, if they were to take to the streets and demand fresh elections, what would be their chance or likelihood of producing such an outcome if they take that type of action?
Number one, Tobagonians will not do that.
Well, then why?
Tobagonians are very patient people. They will wait their time, just as how they waited the last time, and go to the polls and give the punishment act with their finger. Okay? Having said that,
before you go on, is that an admirable?
Is
that an admirable quality that you have just described? That Tobagonians have, that sometimes too much patience could be, a sort of a impediment to your progress. You don't think so?
yes and no. We are a very patient people, or at least some generations. It is something that we get to look at, because if we are looking to have more impatience that is not measured, then we may have a more significant increase in crime than what we have been seeing. So there are flip sides to being patient and impatient, and being tolerant and intolerant. But what I can tell you is, even if they took to the streets, the cards are being held by the current 33 to step down and risk a salary for the next 3 years. So I don't believe those will be dissolved for fresh elections or not.
I see.
So it's not up to,
Um,
yeah. So
I see. I know sometimes when people are too laid back, it could be a major detrimental sort of act to themselves. Sometimes you have to be a bit more, how I should say, responsive to certain matters, because surely I want to believe that you would agree to this. If Fali and they knew that the Begonians didn't have the amount of patience that you just expressed that they have, they would not have done what they did in the way in which you did it. Would they?
well, there is something called youthful exuberance that sometimes, uh, covers over some of the, you know, tolerance factors that we should take into consideration. Um, I can't begin to, I don't know what exactly went down between them in their party. Uh, but I do know that, again, I put out there that he has an opportunity to show the kind of leadership skills that he has in terms of holding the 13 of them together and seeing how it plays out. But again, I want to say that regardless of whether Tobagonians took to the streets or not, it's up to them in the House to vote to decide whether they go back to fresh elections or not,
Did
and
they
to
really?
decide whether they support Fali as a chief secretary or not. Because the same way you have uh, what happened within their party for them to leave, you may very well have amongst those 13 persons who feel that they could be the chief secretary. So that's left to be seen how that plays out. It would be quite interesting.
Dr. Soyafat, 1 year ago they were working together and operating as one. 1 year later, 13 of them have walked away from Watson Dew. 13 out of the 14 left and left one. Has this redefined the 13? And if so, for better or worse?
This has redefined the 13. You would have to look at all the reasons why, um, you know, whether many of them were aligned with the fact that they felt that they were chosen as representatives and that they owe it to their 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 constituents for them to stay in office. You also have to look at many of them, because remember now, the chief secretary holds the cards. So if any of them decided to stay, they would have been terminated from a secretarial position, an assistant secretary position, and could have been left on the bench. So you also have to look at people's feeling that they have to survive. Many of them don't have anything to go back to. Yeah, this is the highest salary they've ever received in their lives, and it's a fact. Some of them doubled and tripled their salaries. It's a fact. So I don't know that any of them are going to stay and risk having to be on the breadline for the next 3 years.
So it is possible that it really had nothing to do with what was right or wrong. It was something based on enlightened self-interest then.
Always possible. They are human beings.
I
That's
see.
always possible.
Yeah. Farid.
Yeah, and
I'll
especially
just
like I
back to-
said, when you have, when you go into a position like that, and it's a significant increase in your salary, then I always tell people I'm probably the only politician that took a demotion in salary when I went into the assembly, and that really tells you my passion for the people of Tobago, because as a medical doctor, we know what I can do in private practice, but that was not enough for me. I think there's way more that can be done for the people of Tobago, for our development, for our healthcare sector, and for everywhere else. And that's what I'm standing for.
Dr. Soifat, let me give you a huge commendation before I turn you back over to Farid. Mia Motley comes across as the leader of the Caribbean, and you sung a lot like her. Farid.
Miss Soyafat.
Even the skies applauded that. I thank you for that, Richard. I admire
And I really
Mia very
mean that.
much.
I really mean that. I really
I
mean that.
admire her so much.
Yeah.
And I cannot imagine what she has had to surmount as a woman in politics and as a female leader of the Caribbean. And she has really taken up the mantle courageously and put Barbados on the map, not just in the Caribbean, but internationally.
Okay. I know Farid has some more questions and so on. Farid.
Yes, Farid.
Dr. Soyafat Angus, when we talk about the marriage between Fali and Watson not lasting a year, in reality, it lasted about 9 months plus. That gestation period that Trantable experienced.
It's quite predictable. Yes, 9 months.
Yeah. Now, I was looking at an article. I was looking at the article, the PDP split on Tobago. It was by Professor Hamid Ghani, dated the 4th of December, 2022. He was purely highlighting that month of September of 2022. He's saying, and I'm quoting here, he's saying that on September 7th, we had the issue of the Roxborough folk group and their visit to New York publicly being surfaced by Watson Duke. So he highlighted the 7th of September. Then he said on the 9th of September, Duke announced that Fali Augustine, Faith Israeli, is Alicia Roberts Patterson were removed from deputy political leaders of the PDP. So within 2 days. Within a week, September 15, Duke resigned as deputy chief secretary of the THA while holding the position of political leader of the PDP. Then by September 19th, we had that little fiasco and we had the sitting of the THA. It was held to elect a new deputy chief secretary, given that deputy chief secretary Watson Duke resigned. Everyone was very suspicious, and I'm making a bold statement. Everyone was very suspicious of that union between Duke and Fali Augustine. It seems that Duke was more than happy to be deputy chief, where he had the latitude to remain as head of the PSA. His business would have been in Port of Spain, Trinidad. It's only when confronted by the then Attorney General Faris Alwari that he began to questioning that he could hold these two hats. That he made a decision and left the PSA. The thing is, Watson Duke seemed to have he seems to be a man on an agenda at all times. He seems to be somebody who has his mind on the general politics, meaning the general election in 2025. He very early in the ascension of the PDP into the THA indicated that his eyes are now on Trinidad. He's going to Trinidad, and it seems that he was putting things in place in order to take the PDP national. All of that has imploded. I am saying, my question to you is this. Did you, in your position, or have you in your position, would you say that you saw this coming? You saw this fall off between these two men coming, that the marriage of these two men could not have worked, and that Watson Duke was poisonous to the growth and development of the PDP and in the context of lifting Tobago to the next level?
So there were rumblings about, internal problems even before the elections. Yeah. And even though you expected a separation of sorts, we didn't expect a full divorce, so quickly. And it really sends a message in terms of the both sides being able to communicate, negotiate, collaborate for a greater cause. And at the end of the day, those are key ingredients any leader must have within, being able to operate in governance anyway, even in regular organizations. You must be able to negotiate, collaborate, and communicate for the greater good. Very early, I called them the social media administration. And because, everything for them was answered on social media, played out on social media. And when you're on social media that heavily, you get fueled and caught up in what you consider to be public support, when really that's, a little bit, not there. And so I think one of their greatest challenges was taking to social media to run the administration instead of communicating with each other. And that is what fueled everything in the tit for tat that we saw play out on the social media domain. So, I don't know whether they're both reflected on what has occurred and are willing to look at growing some skills in those departments and changing their approach. But definitely communication, negotiation, and collaboration have been definitely lacking in the administration.
I want to move to another sector. We want to talk about your Innovative Democratic Alliance Party, but I will make a passing comment. Very skillfully, as a true politician, you've avoided making a pronouncement on Watson Duke and whether he is poisonous to the development drive of Tobago. But I accept that.
Everybody has a part to play in Tobago's politics. Even though it may look bad, there's always an opportunity in there. If you look hard enough, you will see the opportunity. Watson has put Tobago's politics on people's, front burners. Give him that. It's very, unpredictable and, a lot of drama. And that's what we live for these days. So you have to appreciate that a lot of Tobagonians in Trinidad are looking on because he has, created a hype about it.
Not that my view matters, but my position on Watson Duke has always been and is that I find him very colorful, very, very politically savvy, and he knows how to work the crowd. He knows how to get people behind. He's very, very charismatic, and I think sometimes he doesn't get credit for that, I am of the view that Farley needed a Watson Duke at his side. The problem is they don't know how to coexist and how to live on each other. Yeah.
They needed each other. They could have complemented each other if they had the temperament to, again, understand, appreciate, respect each other's roles.
But
mistakes
maybe
were
those
made
roles
on all
weren't
sides.
defined. It's possible that between them, they didn't define their roles and set parameters, and they understood where those parameters stood. But let's get to your party, the Innovative Democratic Alliance. Where do you stand now? Because what we're basically looking at is, let us say, the current 15-member THA doesn't carry Tobago where Tobago expected to be. You are waiting in the wings. The PNM is a very malleable, innovative, responsive political party. You're saying that Tobagonians are patient. You're saying Tobagonians are patient. I don't think anybody is more patient as an organization as the PNM. And
Well, I
my
hope
my
they have the
position.
patience to wait for the next 10, 15 years.
Well, I take you on that. I hear you, and we'll wait and see. But my question is
Tobagonians
this.
are still very smarting by what occurred on what they just came out from. And I don't think they are ready to jump back anytime quickly, anytime soon, especially because they know that they do have an alternative in the IDA. An IDA that is committed to Tobago's governance, is not going to be distracted by wanting to launch a party in Trinidad, because Tobago needs all hands on deck and deserves the full attention of any political leader on this island. The other
I
challenge we have
appreciate. I
had
appreciate it. Yes.
with the Red is that they are seen, even though they say they have a political leader in Tobago, everybody knows that that political leader is the deputy political leader of the party, the national party, and therefore has to toe the line with whatever comes down the pike from Trinidad. Okay? And Tobagonians no longer want to be part of that. And that is why they were quite disappointed with the launch in Trinidad with the current administration, where you've not even paid attention in Tobago, but you have launched out into Trinidad. And so the time has come for a party to be true to the people, committed to the people, and just focused on getting Tobago to a place where it deserves to be, a place where it hasn't been. The journey has taken too long. Tobago has too much potential for us to continue sitting on it and playing footsies with it with national parties. Yeah, it is time for us to take our rightful place and show everyone what we are made of. There are Tobagonians all over the world who are doing amazing jobs, and we can have them right here on the island also performing on lifting the stature of the island itself to international, visibility.
The Innovative Democratic Alliance, the IDA, have you, as leader, done your own audit of where you stood in the election in terms of the results? And if you did that, and I'm sure you did, how do you propose that your homegrown party could elevate itself to the position where it is going to win the mandate of the people of Tobago and elect it into office?
We started where the PDP started, yeah, and with the experience that I've had, yeah, the leadership development, the capacity that I've had, and also the mere fact that the party is committed to remaining a Tobago party. Yes, the most we will do is consider actually filling the 2 seats, not for them to join anybody in administration, but for them to go to the parliament and speak on behalf of Tobago without any muzzle on top of them, without any muzzle. They go down there and speak for Tobago in that parliament, so we can continue to get what we want in terms of our side-by-side walk with Trinidad. So Tobagonians, that's what they want. We have listened to them. That's what they want, and we are intending to give them what they want.
Allow me to put it this way, and I'm subject to your review. You have been in a relationship with the PNM as a political organization, and you stepped aside. From where you stood before you left the PNM, what in your view the PNM was not doing to the benefit of Tobago that caused that separation?
They moved away from listening to the people and serving the masses to only serving a few.
All right. If that is your position, that they moved away from lifting the people and serving the masses, is the management in the PNM, and I'm saying, and forgive the word management, I want to say the politics in the PNM, you would have had the benefit of being part of that experience. The same way that you're saying that Farley doesn't communicate, right, with other political entities on the island. Is it that you're saying that the PNM was not engaging in that political discourse with the other political elements, meaning communicating with other competing interests in order to come to some sort of consensus as to what is best for Tobago? Was it the same problem with while you were in the PNM?
Like I said, they were no longer listening or in connection with the people and what the people wanted. And that is why we saw what played out in the 6-6 and eventually in the 14-1. I mean, it's no rocket science to see that if you don't listen to the people, that is what is going to happen to you. And after 20 years of being in office, they became deaf to the people.
What
I could no longer, and I took a stance. Was it easy for me to come out and go on my own? No. But you know what? When you believe in something, it gives you the strength to step out and do what you need to do. And I believe that the people of Tobago deserved more, and they deserve even more now.
Any political party that has to assume the ranks of occupying office must appeal to the young persons, the young people in Tobago. Do you have a team of alternate executive members, if we may put it that way in bold terms, that you are foreseeing in 4 to 5 years' time, or maybe within the next 3 years, who will be able to step into that position where they could command the attention of the young people in Tobago, have the young people supported in the same way that the PDP seem to have been able to do that, and therefore lift the idea to the point where it could compete at that level in terms of challenge for the executive membership of the THA moving forward?
Absolutely.
Because it certainly would not be just about you. Yeah.
Absolutely. The young people out there are not foolish. They're not foolish. And many of them have been impacted negatively by the decisions of the current administration. You see, the current administration did not understand that when somebody gets into office in Tobago, it's usually not your party members that voted for you, but party supporters from the other party came over and voted. So when you come into office and you go on a firing spree, you are terminating persons who voted for you.
All right.
You're terminating persons who voted for you, and they did not understand that. Because Tobago's size is so small. When you look at the numbers in the different electorate areas, there's no way that one party would have had all of that. And they got the support from the young people who used to support the other party, the swing voters, and they did not recognize and acknowledge that, terminated many of them. So young people out there are very disgruntled, and they are, they're really not, looking back this time.
Let's talk about some issues. The issue of crime. There have been 12 murders in Tobago thus far this year. Tragically, Tobago would have lost a police officer within recent weeks. So with this number 12 murders, that's a lot for a small island.
Yes.
The police, the TTPS have stated very clearly that there's a rise in violent crime in Tobago rather than the isolated incidents that would have occurred in years gone by. Now, with the pandemic and the we are seeing we are the tails end. I don't want to even say that we were at the end of it. We are the tails end of of that pandemic experience. Tobago would have felt the brunt of it in terms of businesses closing, in terms of the economy suffering. Tobago is now trying to get itself the wheels of its economy going again. There has to be, and in most economies, a correlationship between a drop-off in the economy and criminal activity. What is your party's, and I'm just throwing it out there, what is your party's position in relation to how does it intend to engage the young people to put a stranglehold on crime moving forward?
So, you know, if you are going to send home persons and you truly felt that maybe the government was too top heavy in terms of hiring persons, and you are saying that it was not victimization, then I would have expected to see a program in there retooling these persons who you're sending home, because a lot of them came from the URP program and CPEP. So what are you sending them home to do? What tools do they have to go home with? What capacity support have you given them to either go into a small business for themselves, or to grow some, to have some retooling such that they can go and present themselves to somewhere else to be hired? That was not done. People were just sent home. And at a time when you know that the economy was already struggling, well, I don't know if they recognize that, the economy was already struggling. So when you send home these persons, who, by the way, those are the persons who normally spend their money. When you send them home and they don't have money to spend, it becomes a domino effect. It becomes a domino effect. And therefore, some of them have families to feed. If they can't get to feed their families, they begin to lime on street corners and, become deviant, in the community. And so we have to be more sensitive to what we're doing in the economy that can take it down a road even further of deterioration. Also, many of the contractors who were not paid, I said to people, contractors don't drive backhoes themselves. They don't go and, clean up themselves. They hire people. And when the contractors have not been paid, and by extension, all their people have not been paid, you can see how the collapse is happening in the Tobago space, affecting just about everyone.
Let's talk about the Sandals, the proposed Sandals Hotel in Tobago. Tourism is the main fillip that drives Tobago. What is your view on the fact that Sandals were not allowed to set up in Tobago? Do you think that would have been a positive thing for Tobago, or you of the belief that just that was put in the public space, that so many of the benefits were rigidly tied to Sandals and they bringing in their own people to carry the hotel, that Tobagonians weren't really benefiting from that relationship?
I believe that whole situation was mishandled. Yeah, mismanaged. Mishandled, mismanaged. Why? Because there was no real consultation with the people of Tobago to say, here's what you're getting. Tobagonians like to be involved in their own talk. Yes? And no one is clear as to exactly what Sandals was presenting to the people of Tobago. People of Tobago should have been approached. They should have been given the advantages, shown the disadvantages, and show how the advantages outweigh the disadvantages. Yes, Tobago needs room stock, but in addition to the room stock, we need to be able to determine what are we selling as our tourism product. And I don't think that we have truly figured that out. Not only that, sand and sea tourism is not the only thing these days. I have said to someone recently, I said, we have to find a way to increase and have a consistent increase of the population size on the island, not this whoop, 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 you know, um, 1 weekend a month or something like that. But we have to find a way to increase the population size on the island that is tourism based. I said to them, we have one of our greatest resources is our sunshine. And we have not found it. In fact, I was negotiating with persons maybe about 5 years ago. I went to New York and had meetings with a university there. They have a great program, athletic program. And during the winter, they have to pay a whole lot of money to get indoor courts and all of these things to continue their programs. And when we sat down with them, it would have been cheaper for their students to come to Tobago for 6 months, okay, and utilize our sunshine here than to pay for indoor facilities out there. We have to start looking at programs like that create that influx of students that gives a steady rise, because once those students are here, families visit, okay? Not only that, our local athletes have an opportunity to improve their skills by mixing and mingling with these other universities that will be willing to send their students and set up programs in Tobago to take advantage of our sunshine. We have so many courts around the island, so many. Underutilized. This definitely mind persons taking my ideas, yeah. But at the end of the day, you expect it to benefit Tobagonians and business sector, because now the business sector is not just looking for the next festival coming. They have an increased number on the island that could satisfy them for the next 6 months. And that's just one of the things
Dr.
that
Sawyer
we can with.
As a political leader, it would be remiss of me to allow you to come on the show and leave without asking you some other political matters, or matters, I should say, that are related to the national politics, right? Because your politics expands beyond the island of Tobago. This country has just faced and experienced a record-breaking development in murders. It was 550, and we're somewhere in the vicinity of 580, with more than 16 days ago again to go before the year ends. What is your reaction to that, given that a government has been given all the resources and so on to prevent this development from developing?
Crime belongs to all of us. Yes, the government has a significant role to play. But I believe that it's long gone that we have not recognized that our family structure is very broken. The family structure where we had children who lived with parents and had the support of grandparents within the same areas, that is no longer so. And the policies of successive governments where you give people houses so far away from, their family support system also contributes to children growing up on their own. And so we really get to look at the whole family structure and where the family structure does not provide for adequate grooming of the children, we get to look at our education sector and see where can we pick up where the family structure has left off until we can begin strengthening that family structure. We also need to consider that the education system, it is time that we address the education system in this island and country, okay, because it does not foster young people coming out feeling as if they could step out of high school and really have a support system to go into business for themselves, or to go somewhere else that is not academically inclined. We are still into academics, feeling that Eric Williams said that the future of the children lies in the bags of the children. Well, it wasn't in the book bags of just the children who are engineers, doctors, having subjects, but perhaps having something under their belt, a skill that they can go directly into the workplace and begin to work, and know that they can have that support system in order to do that. So whilst we run down crime from the front, we definitely have to start looking at how we interrupt it on the end where it's close to the beginning, because children are not born criminals.
That's a very good point and correlation that you have expressed, Doc. But what if one argues that, in parts of America and America as a whole and in different parts of the world, you have parental shortcomings as it relates to developing the children living far away from home, and therefore they too are growing up on their own. America, Germany, England, Canada, these countries, Europe, have more access to all different types of developments in the world, which would contribute to shaping and conditioning the minds of their children, and yet still their situation is not as out of control as ours. If they, in the face of
I
all
don't know
of
if I would go that far to say not as out of control, but
no, per capita. When you work out our population to the amount and theirs ours, they are far less than ours. So therefore, what would be our excuse, Doc? What role the government, their governments play a role to keep it down? What about ours? You hear me, Farid?
Yeah, I'm hearing you very clearly. I think we're having just a small connectivity issue, but our friend will tune back in along the way. But Richard, it's a very fruitful discussion, and
you're breaking up. I can't hear you. I don't know.
It sounds like it is emanating from your end, Doctor.
And government has significant role.
Your volume, you need to
unmute your mic.
Unmute it, yeah.
Right. Yeah, we heard that government. Yeah, the government has a significant. That was the last thing we heard.
Yes, government does have a part to play. But I hear you about those cultures where they're accustomed living long distances. Remember, our culture is in transition. This is not something we have been accustomed to. The culture is in transition. Those persons must have put things in place, to be able to facilitate that. You have, and some people question it. You have what the Medicare and Medicaid system that is out there. What are the additional resources that we have here for our young people, or young single mothers, persons who have moved, that type of activity? I believe a review of the whole social, and I don't want to say social structure, but social cycle is absolutely necessary to determine where the gaps are and where we get interrupted along the way, such that we begin to see a change in the outcome, which is the result of crime, the rising crime situation. But there has to be a place in that cycle that we get to interrupt it, because we were not always there.
Doc, we have a lot of guns in the country, and we were told that the port of Port of Spain and the scanning system was down now for almost 2 years, Farid?
Yeah.
2 years.
2 years.
And that thousands of containers were passing through without being adequately scanned, knowing that murders are being done so easily because of the existence or prevalence of the gun. What would you say about the government for allowing that system to be as it is, given that we know that they knew that the scanners weren't working, and with that knowledge, they left it as it was for so long? Knowing if we are able to remove a lot of the guns or prevent them from coming in, young people would not have such easy access to draw a weapon and use it on somebody else.
It's absolutely shameful. But we all know that the government are quick to put up buildings, new buildings, but they're very poor at maintenance and replacing instruments such as that are very needy for the public to be able to be safe. So it's quite shameful to have had that happen. And I certainly hope that it is something, now that the numbers are up there, that it is something that they would look at. But I again state that you cannot just look at that one thing right now. You also have to begin looking at the other end of the spectrum in terms of where our children are concerned.
No, that is true, but that is more medium term, long term, because you can't look at the children and their development now and you get them to make the required maneuver or adjustment right now. Right. What do we do in the short term, but ahead of that, in the immediate situation? What do we do to help correct the situation?
Other countries have had an amnesty on guns. I don't know whether that may work here. But apart from that, like you said, those low-hanging fruit, those are low-hanging fruit that have not been picked.
To have an amnesty, yeah. But they would argue, if you do that and people bring in the guns and you give them this amnesty, what you would have done also, on the other hand, while you're getting some of the guns off the street, you will now compromise some of the matters before the court. Because if you give amnesty, in effect, you're also cancelling some of the cases. Because they may have been waiting on such a gun to determine who was the owner of this weapon, or if the fingerprint was on that weapon, the ballistics and that type of thing. And if someone committed a murder with a gun and was on the run, and then hear about gun amnesty, and nothing would happen to you if you turn in the gun, and then you turn in the gun and they discovered this weapon was used in the murder and it could have been you, they can't come for you again because you offered an amnesty and
I hear you, and we get to look at the cost-benefit ratio of the actions we take. It's just like when I have a patient in the hospital and you decide that this patient is ill enough, sick enough, they need a certain drug, but the side effect of the drug. You have to determine, would the side effect kill the patient, or is there a chance that giving them the drug that they may live? Those are tough decisions you have to make, and it all comes with an assessment. If you take the guns off the street, yes, you may lose some cases, but would that create a decrease in the number of murders that we have by taking the guns off the street? I can't say that. I certainly don't run the Security Council, so they have some work to do, and they get to look at all angles, and again, pick the low-hanging fruit, like your fixing your the security at the port in terms of how we treat with detection there, because Tobago is exposed with that too.
Mm-hmm.
Tobago gets exposed with that. And
The
it's
murders seem to be increasing in Tobago now.
yes. But like I
Um,
said, that goes along with the economy. So we need to start really looking at what we're doing here.
I see. Farid, thank you, Doc.
Dr. Sophia Angus, my question is this, and I'm tempted to throw this into the ring. You are the political leader of the IDA. What are your views on the tons of money that is being spent on the development of that airport in Tobago and paying persons off within the community, within the area, to relocate, because it's a lot of money for relocation? There's a point of view that expanding that airport in Tobago without actually laying the foundation for increase, if I should put it this way, without laying the foundations for a proper tourism industry with hotels to accommodate that traffic of persons. What is the sense you develop an airport to the level where international traffic will increase, but Tobago can't absorb that traffic of persons? Are you of the
National
view that
traffic increase?
well spent?
I understand that even though the airport has a facelift, that we may not have the additional grading to increase the necessary capacity that we need. Listen, there is a whole movement of Airbnb movement, and I believe that it's an untapped market by this government. There are so many guest houses on the island, and if I were the Secretary of Tourism, I was doing a full audit of all the guest houses and the status of the guest houses on the island. I was putting something in place, including an architect and maybe an interior designer to assist persons to bring it up to a certain grade. And then you do have an increase in capacity of presentable rooms that are being offered. And if necessary, the THA can give a grading to that room stock, whether you're in an A category, B category, or C category. But the Airbnb movement is all over the world. And as young people travel from across the world, they're looking at more Airbnb instead of major hotels. That is not to say that we don't need the hotel stock, but I'm saying we have a resource right in it and to be able to tap into it. In terms of the airport, again, people feel they could just come in and manhandle Tobagonians. All Tobagonians want is a bit of respect in terms of coming in and fully communicating with them, and so that they can see clearly, what you're about and feel that you're really on their sides. Okay? So I don't have all the information on it, but I believe that more communication could have been done, more plans could have been shared, and a timeline in terms of working with the THA, because at some point there was a tug of war, and this would have been a tug of war when you have same party in Trinidad, same party in Tobago. There was a tug of war in terms of how the people were being treated. Was the THA ready in terms of some of the spaces to move the people, and what support systems were there in order to have that done?
Are you of the view that the money that was spent on the airport and the size of the investment on the airport at this point in time, given the current economic status in Tobago, given the world economic trend, given the current state of our finances, central government in Trinidad, do you think that money is being misspent at this time, and it should have been a smaller project rather than the enlarged project that we're seeing?
I don't know. Again, nobody seems to know exactly the extent of the project. Have you seen the plans? I don't know who has seen the plans, but you don't know the extent of the project. And it's not so much of, whether it is, the extent of the project, but the effectiveness of it. What is the effectiveness of the project? Are we going to be getting more flights? Are we going to be getting larger flights? Are we going to be getting flights from, places where we would not normally get flights from? Yeah. And how does Tobago benefit from the fees that will be collected in the Tobago space from all that supposedly increased flux of flights? And so that is where I would like to know. You spend the money, but how are we benefiting from now the increased transportation coming out of that? We all know that is huge business inside of that. How many Tobagonians will be guaranteed shops and spaces inside of that international airport space? Those are the things that I would really love to know.
Is it that you're suggesting that airport and all the activities surrounding its evolution is a Pandora box at this stage that we don't know? We don't have a short, medium, and a long-term portfolio that we're looking at, or blueprint that speaks to what are the projections moving forward. Is it that it's a Pandora box at this stage?
I think many Tobagonians are not too clear as to really what has taken place with that. I certainly am not. And I would love to find out where I can go and get the information on it that is authentic. Yeah. And that we can see clearly what has occurred and where it's going. Yeah. But it's not the first airport that we have built in controversy.
The state of the jetties in Tobago, generally, and this is information that is carried in the national newsprint. I can tell you the one in Plymouth has been down. They did recent renovations, and the one in Palatouve. The one in Charlottesville is up. There's a general decline in the upkeep of the jetties in Tobago. What have your party done, or what has your party done in relation to highlighting the need to have those jetties up and running? Because apart from tourism, the fishing industry in Tobago is very vibrant. It is something that benefits the common man in Tobago. There is a need to have up and ready and running jetties.
Absolutely.
What is your view in terms of the money it takes to get those jetties up and running, and why sometimes we are seeing 2 years, it's been 2 to 3 years now, some of those jetties have fallen and we haven't seen any investment taken in those areas?
Because people don't understand how this economy works. If you understood how the economy in Tobago works, some of those things would have gotten priority. Yeah? And so if you satisfy the fishermen in Tobago, that's a huge industry on the island. Even in Trinidad, people want Tobago fish all the time. Okay? So when you're not understanding of how the economy works, you tend to just leave things to languish. And we're not even talking about just satisfying a group of people or a community. We're talking about the economic value of treating with something like that. However, I do know that the Plymouth Jetty is in some kind of controversy with who really owns it, who was given it, who it was gifted to. There's some sort of controversy there that nobody could seem to work out right now. And so, that needs to have more investigation into it. But I tell you this, the IDA took a decision in the first year to not come out and be very vocal about everything. Because, we made a decision that sometimes when you're too vocal, the people keep focusing on the enemy outside and they don't find their enemies within. So we remain very quiet and allow them to focus on themselves. And we see the results of that. But coming up in this year, we are starting out with our community town hall meetings, community to community, because we gave this administration an opportunity to settle in without blah-blahing over them at every turn without criticizing them at every turn. There were times that we came out with key statements when we thought it was over the top. For example, when the minority leader and the Secretary of Education got into a spat, and her mother came out quite, vulgar on Facebook, we spoke about that. We spoke about the contractors. We spoke about a few other things that affected the economy. But in terms of jumping at them at every single turn, we decided we were not going to do that. We're going to allow them their year, and then we would begin our track. And so that is why we have not, commented over the top. I know that the minority has their responsibility, so every week they are chomping at the bits. But no, that was not our strategy, and we are pleased with what our decisions were.
We're nearing the end of our time with you, so forgive me for spotting in terms of some questions. I had some issues I wanted to raise. There's something in my heart that I need to raise. Tobago has produced some great leaders in terms of A.N.R. Robinson. If we were to go even before that, A.P.T. James. We've had the Honorable Keith Rowley. There are a few people who contributed to national life: Bertil Sinclair, Claude Noel, and Dwight York. I'm speaking less so of York in this vein because I think York may have taken care of himself better than most. Claude Noel has been in poor health. It was carried in the national newsprint that he's nearing blindness. Yet still, we don't hear Tobago and the THA or any representative body in Tobago talking about what they're doing for Mr. Noel. There's a highway named after him, but yet still he was speaking through the newsprint stating that where he lives, the housing there isn't even adapted to allow him to free point of entry and exit to go and do simple things in Tobago. Are you in contact with Mr. Noel? Do you know what is the state of his health right now? If not, national heroes in Tobago, Mr. Sinclair hasn't been in the best of health. He recently had some surgery, I understand. These are people that were in the vanguard of Tobago's development, sport-wise, putting Tobago on the map. It's sad to see that now that they're no longer very active in terms of they've gotten into that 70 plus, 80 plus age bracket, and they disappeared. We hear stories about their health. What are you all doing there in Tobago to look at uplifting their names, ensuring that they're remembered?
You can't deny that you have a whole highway, after Claude Noel, that is there. And so persons, young people should know who he is and what he contributed to our space. In addition to that, I am not sure what support systems they have now for persons in that category. I visited Mr. Noel myself about 4 years ago, and have not seen him recently. And so I know that persons were recognized in their various capacities over the years by the official Tobago House of Assembly Awards, and I think some of them received national awards. But in terms of where they are now and a support for them in their current state, I really don't know what is in place for them at the level of the assembly.
Perhaps that is something the IDA could look into. Hopefully, some level of reaching out can take place. Some level of support can be provided, particularly in the interest of Mr. Noel, who has been experiencing problems with his sight. I don't know him personally, but as a young person growing up in Trinidad and being avidly involved from a spectator's point of view in sport, it's difficult to read things like this where persons are suffering, persons who contributed, because having a highway named after yourself is one thing, and it's nice to know that it carries your name, but carrying one's name doesn't alleviate the pain and the distress that one feels when it is you get to that age when suffering sets in. Richard, I don't know, we're coming to that end now. I'm going to give you the last punches at Miss Dr. Soyefat Angus. I think he's
It's
he's
frozen.
yeah, he's frozen a bit. All right.
Mute your
But
microphone.
yeah, Dr. Soifat, we
He said your mic is muted.
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
he'll get back to us soon.
Yeah.
I want to thank you for your forthrightness and for making yourself available, the warmth that you've shared with us. It's always good to give somebody else a point of view in terms of our program. I look forward to having another occasion where we could discuss other things. I'm sure that the Tobago politics is evolving as we speak, and I don't want to say the drama. The drama puts too much invective into it. I would like to see some sort of resolution at the THA to a point where there's greater communication between its membership, the 15 elected members, and its constituents. Because I get the feeling from talking to yourself, Dr. Vanos James, and even Ms. Haddad, that there is a disconnect between the current executive and the people on the ground. Hopefully, I can get a conversation going with Fali Augustine moving forward, and he could perhaps plug that gap or confirm or deny whether he's isolating himself. He and his executive have isolated themselves from the people. But all the same, thank you so much again for making yourself available. It's great to hear your voice, and it's good to see you. And we've suggested some things that we would like to see done, and you've shared with us some of the things that happen behind the scenes. Hopefully, we will hear more from the IDA, and we would hear more from Tobago generally. Thank you again. Thank you so much for your warmth.
Thank you for having me, Fareed, and thank you, Richard and David, and all of your listening audience. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so
having me
much.
here.
Thank you so much, Dr. Soifat Angus. It's been a privilege. I would like to ask you some questions, but I gave those guys all the freeway today. I will bring you back so I can ask you some real simple nation building questions.
I'll commit to that.
Okay, good. Thank you, Fareed. Richard, I see you have disappeared on us, so until next time. News straight ahead.
The future of talk is here. Power 102 Digital. Power 102 Digital. Streaming 24/7 on power102fm.com and on the Power 102 Digital app.